Congressman Jim Banks, chairman of the Republican Study Committee. Sir, really want to thank you for joining us here at CPAC. We're in Florida. It's open, very big contrast with a lot of leftist states out there across the country. What are your thoughts here at the Conservative Political Action Conference this year?
I've been to a bunch of CPACs before, Matt, and I got to tell you, getting out of Washington and coming to Florida, where everything is open, people are happy, you can tell people are different. They feel different here than they do in other places. It's refreshing. So it's great to be here. I'm honored to be on the big stage later today. We're going to talk about the future of the Republican Party. I'll be on the stage with Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader, and I have a lot to say about where we're going as a party. My biggest message is, if some of the voices in the Republican Party, like Liz Cheney, prevail. By the way, this is a very limited number of members of the Republican Party, but if they prevail, that's right. If they prevail and erase Donald Trump and the voters who back President Trump from the Republican Party, we won't win the majority in 2022. We definitely won't win the White House back in 2024. But if we embrace the Trump agenda and continue to be the party that advocates for traditional conservative values, but also recognizes that President Trump brought new issues into the fold to our agenda, I believe we're going to be very successful moving forward.
I like that point that you made about how people are happy here, because it seems like, you know, it's been a rough few months for this movement, for Trump supporters, for conservatives. Really a rough past year since the last CPAC. The last CPAC was when we had one of the first coronavirus cases in the United States. And so it seems like people kind of needed this, right? They kind of need this gathering of happy warriors to try to figure out chart that movement forward. Where do we go from here? You know, the Democrats, they got complete control in Washington, sure, but the future does seem bright for the right.
I really believe that. And election night was not all bad. I mean, the presidential outcome, and we can talk about that for a long time about the outcome at the White House. But the House Republicans won back a dozen or more seats when all the prognosticators told us we were going to lose seats and go into a deeper minority. And we got just a hair away from winning back the majority in November. And I can tell you that's because Donald Trump was on the ballot, and he brought with him millions of voters who wouldn't otherwise vote Republican, but they came to support him. We need those voters to remain engaged in 2022 to win back the majority, and I believe that they will be if the Republican Party stays on the right course. And those voters are going to put Donald Trump or another Republican back in the White House in 2024. So we have to keep those voters engaged, and CPAC understands this better than anywhere I've been. That's why there's so much optimism here, because you're reflecting the voices that I believe are going to carry this party for the next generation. They're well represented here at CPAC, and they understand exactly what we're talking about.
So one of the things that happened last night was the House Democrats, in the middle of the night, at 2 in the morning, passed this $1.9 trillion bill. No Republicans voted for it. Purely partisan bill. It had bipartisan opposition. 2 Democrats joined all of you guys in voting against it. My mom used to tell me that nothing good happens after midnight, right? What is going on here? I mean, the Democrats are already engaged in, they told us they were going to be this was going to be unity, unifying, we were going to work together, it was going to be the good old days. Doesn't really seem like that's the case, huh?
Yeah, not at all. In fact, there hasn't been much or anything at all. It's been unifying coming out of the Biden administration since they took power on January 20th. They're from these Democrats who are as radical as they've ever been. This is the most radical left-wing Democrat Party that we've ever seen. And the stuff they're going to push through, like this $1.9 trillion spending package that passed in the middle of the night last night, they don't want to talk about what's in it. I mean, notice they're not talking about what's in this bill. There's handouts for every special interest group that put Democrats in power, left-leaning organizations like Planned Parenthood and labor unions. There's a bridge to Canada from New York that's an earmark for Chuck Schumer. And there's an underground tunnel in San Francisco for Silicon Valley workers for Nancy Pelosi, both totaling hundreds of millions of dollars that they would rather spend on goodies and handouts to their special interest groups rather than spend on helping kids who are suffering from their schools being shut down emotionally and academically and getting our schools reopened. They would rather spend money on those things instead.
And if I'm not mistaken, they even shot down an amendment that would have taken those goodies for the Democrats out and then replaced it with mental health for people who have suffered during the lockdowns. The Democrats don't even want to help people out there across the country. So one of the things that you're doing as the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, we've done a lot of stories on this on Breitbart, you're really trying to turn it into an engine to force ideas out there again and really get back to this policy focus and kind of fuse the good stuff from the old days of the Reagan days with the good stuff that Trump taught us too. And bring all of this together and put together a winning formula for Trump supporters and the conservative movement and the Republican Party. Tell us about this on a couple of the key issues, because I know you guys have been doing like kind of weeks focused on different issues. There was a China week, there was an immigration week, there was an abortion week, a life week. Tell us about kind of the approach on this and kind of how you're going after it on different issues.
Yeah, well, Matt, it's going really well. I mean, when Republicans are focused on the issues and the difference between us and the radical left, we win. So Republican Study Committee is leading the way and charting the course and creating and drafting this consensus conservative agenda. And so far it's been very successful to rally Republicans back together again. There are a few voices in our party who don't agree, but for the most part, the vast majority of us agree that if we take the values of Ronald Reagan, fiscal responsibility, policies that put workers, American workers first economically, if we focus on being the party that believes in a strong national defense but peace through strength, which was the Reagan foreign policy, was also the Trump foreign policy, the pro-life party protecting the Hyde Amendment and keeping our taxpayer dollars from going to fund abortion. Those are the traditional conservative issues, but we have to adapt to the moment too, and this is where President Trump becomes so important. He taught us that we have to take big tech, free speech, censorship head on and do it in a big way, and Republican Study Committee is going to lead those efforts. We need to restore trust in our elections through election security and integrity measures that RSC is leading the way. We also need to be the party that holds China accountable. The Democrats have become the party of big business. They've become the pro-China party, the party of Silicon Valley and Wall Street. The Republicans, more than ever before, because of Donald Trump, are now the party of the working man and woman in this country. The polls show it last week. Even CNN put out an article that showed that we've gained a 12% advantage of working class voters. They used to vote for Democrats, but now they identify themselves as Republicans because of what Donald Trump did for this country and did for our party.
We're obviously going to hear from President Trump tomorrow. It's the first time we're going to hear from him since he left the White House. We don't know if he's going to run again in 2024. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. If he does, even Mitt Romney says that he will be the Republican nominee. Everybody knows that. If he doesn't run, then the question is who steps up, who fills those shoes. I don't know who that might be. We're going to hear from several of them here. We've already heard from Ron DeSantis. We've heard from Senator Cruz, Senator Hawley, several other senators, Senator Cotton. I believe we're going to hear from Secretary Pompeo today. We're going to hear from Governor Kristi Noem today. There's tons of other ones. You guys at the RSC are also working with a lot of these potential candidates. What is it that people are looking for in their next leader if it isn't Trump? And also, again, I do think that if it's Trump, he's going to win. But if it isn't Trump and he doesn't run, then what is it the qualities that they need in the next commander-in-chief?
Yeah, it's the Trump agenda, and you can call it whatever you want. You can call it the Trump populist agenda, or just recognize that these are policies that win over a vast majority of Americans, working class Americans. And the good news, Matt, is Republicans have a great bench. We have a deep bench, and RSC is hearing from all of them. They're all coming to RSC because we're developing the substance, the agenda, an agenda that brings consensus on the right, and whether it's strong immigration policies and building the wall, whether it's taking on big tech and protecting our free speech, whether it's restoring trust in our elections, or taking on China. I mean, the RSC is on the front lines of developing the agenda that a winning presidential candidate is going to adopt in 2024, and we're hearing from all of them. I have my own favorites, but we're hearing from a bunch of them, and you're going to hear from them, a lot of them at CPAC. We're in Florida, and I got to tell you, after being here just for a day, you got to put Ron DeSantis near the top of that list because he's providing great leadership in this state that our country desperately needs as well.